The name Stonehenge is thought to come from the Old English or Saxon word Stanhengen, which means stone hanging, because it kind of resembles what gallows looked like in the Middle Ages. You had two uprights with a crossbeam.
Most people have no idea that Stonehenge looked completely different when it was first built. What stands on Salisbury Plain today is the result of over 500 years of construction, demolition, and rebuilding. It started around 3000 BC as nothing more than a circular ditch with wooden posts. Generation after generation tore it apart and put it back together, repositioning stones, adding new elements, refining the design each time. A research team decided to take every scan, every excavation report, every acoustic measurement, and every astronomical alignment ever recorded at this monument and feed it all into an AI. Thousands of data points spanning decades of research. The system worked through everything in a matter of weeks. When the results came back, acoustical engineer Trevor Cox at the University of Salford stared at the screen without saying a word. His colleague Rupert Till read through the output twice, then quietly asked whether the system had made an error. It had not. The AI had reached a conclusion nobody in that room was expecting, one that completely reclassifies Stonehenge. Not as a temple, not as a calendar, as something far more unsettling. And what it was built to do to the people standing inside it is something no researcher was prepared to hear. Some scholars had noticed over time that the stone count corresponds loosely with a 30-day month, and that certain stones could mark the beginning of 3 10-day weeks. But the AI was not interested in calendar theories. It was scanning for something nobody had ever thought to look for. When the system processed the complete archaeological record alongside geological surveys, magnetic field measurements, and engineering reconstructions, it flagged a pattern. The stones were not chosen for how they looked. They were not chosen for symbolic meaning. Every single stone was chosen for what it could do. Each one contributes specific acoustic, magnetic, and resonant properties to a larger system. When the AI simulated how all of those properties interact inside the circle together, the result was far too precise to be coincidence. Stonehenge was not assembled, it was engineered to affect the human beings who stepped inside it. And we now have the science to prove it. In 2020, Trevor Cox and his team at the University of Salford conducted the most detailed acoustic study of Stonehenge ever attempted. They built a precise 1:2 scale model using 3-dimensional printed stones, arranged in the exact configuration of the original monument, placed it inside a specially designed acoustic chamber, and ran hundreds of tests using voice recordings, musical instruments, and frequency sweeps across the entire audible spectrum. What they found shook them. Inside the stone circle, voices sounded fuller, richer, and more powerful than anything Neolithic people would have experienced in everyday life. Sound did not scatter and disappear the way it does in open fields. It held together, it concentrated. Drums produced vibrations that wrapped around listeners from every direction, creating what Cox later described as an almost immersive wall of sound. But the detail that stopped the team cold was something else entirely. Despite the massive stone surfaces surrounding the space, there were no echoes, none at all. The inner stones disrupted sound waves coming from the outer ring in a way that completely eliminated sharp reflections. You do not eliminate echoes by accident. You eliminate them through deliberate engineering. Someone designed this, and that is not even the disturbing part. Rupert Till, a musicologist and acoustics researcher at the University of Huddersfield, expanded on Cox's work by studying the Welsh bluestones themselves. He discovered that some of them produce metallic ringing tones when struck, almost like bells. The region they were quarried from is called Maen Clochog in Welsh, which translates to ringing stones. The Neolithic builders selected these specific rocks from a site 150 miles away because of the sound they made. Not the rocks nearby, not the rocks 10 miles out. Rocks from 150 miles away, hauled across brutal terrain because they produced the right tone. Then Till found something else, something he initially hesitated to publish. The stone arrangement generates low-frequency resonance, deep vibrations that sit below the threshold of conscious hearing. Scientists call it infrasound. You do not hear infrasound with your ears. You feel it in your chest, in your bones, in your gut. Here is where things get dark. Infrasound does not just create physical sensations, it creates emotional ones and not subtle ones. Laboratory studies have shown that subjects exposed to infrasound at specific frequencies report chills running down their spine, sudden dread, crushing pressure in their chest, and an unshakable feeling of being watched. Some perceive flickering shadows at the edges of their vision. Others experience a primal, overwhelming urge to flee, a deep animal panic with no rational explanation. In controlled environments, researchers have watched calm, clear-headed adults become visibly distressed within minutes of exposure. All from sound waves they could not consciously hear, and that is not even the worst part. Infrasound also induces heightened suggestibility and emotional vulnerability. Your rational mind stays intact. You can still think clearly. But your body is screaming that something powerful and invisible is standing right beside you. And in that state, you will believe almost anything a person in authority tells you. When Cox explained the implications to journalists, his voice went flat. The kind of quiet that fills a room when someone realizes they have found something they were not supposed to find. The acoustic properties of Stonehenge were not incidental. They were not a lucky accident of stacking rocks. They were the entire point. The AI processed all of this and reached a conclusion the research team found deeply unsettling. Stonehenge was not built for worship. It was built to manufacture a specific psychological state on demand in anyone who entered the circle, and the acoustics were only the beginning. Now imagine this from the perspective of someone living 5,000 years ago. You have traveled for days, maybe weeks, to reach this place everyone speaks of in hushed tones. You have heard stories your entire life. Your parents told you, their parents told them, the place where the gods speak, the place where the earth hums with voices from beyond. You arrive exhausted, hungry, already overwhelmed. You see the stones rising against the sky, impossibly massive, arranged in patterns that seem to pulse with meaning you cannot quite grasp. You enter the circle at sunset as the light bleeds red across the horizon. And then you feel something you have never felt before in your life. A vibration begins in your chest. Not a sound you can hear, a pressure you cannot escape. The air thickens. When the priests speak, their voices do not simply reach your ears. They surround you. They fill the space between your thoughts. They seem to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. From the stones themselves, from the ground beneath your feet, from inside your own skull. Your heart races for no reason you can name. Your skin prickles with electricity that has no source. A wave of nausea rolls through you, then passes, replaced by something worse, a sense of absolute smallness, absolute vulnerability. Every instinct you have is screaming that you are in the presence of something beyond human, something divine, something that could erase you with a single thought. And then the priest speaks. He tells you the gods demand your grain, your labor, your children for their service. You believe it, not because of faith, not because of tradition, because every cell in your body is confirming it. The terror is not in your mind, it is in your bones, and you would give anything, surrender anything to make it stop. But here is the thing, you were not imagining any of it, the stones were doing it to you. The builders were not primitive architects stacking rocks into decorative circles. They were masters of acoustic engineering and human psychology, operating at a level we are only now beginning to understand. They knew that a person who feels terror in their bones will believe anything they are told about gods and punishment. And they built a structure that could manufacture that terror on demand, not once, not for special occasions. Anytime they needed compliance, anytime they needed obedience, anytime they needed belief, they had the machine. So if Stonehenge was a precision instrument for rewriting human emotion, a weapon disguised as sacred architecture, the next question kept the research team awake for weeks. Where did all the components come from? Because the builders did not use local materials. They went to extraordinary and seemingly impossible lengths to acquire specific stones from specific places. And when the AI traced the origins of every component, it found something that should not have been possible. The smaller bluestones weigh between 2 and 5 tons. The sarsens weigh up to 25. For generations, scholars debated whether glaciers had pushed these rocks into position or whether human effort alone was responsible. The AI settled that debate in weeks. By processing thousands of geological surveys, transportation studies, and environmental datasets, the system mapped the exact origin of every stone. Bluestones from the Pressley Hills in Wales, 150 miles away. Sarsens from Marlborough Downs, roughly 25 miles to the north. Both of those origins were already known. Then the AI flagged something human researchers had missed entirely. The altar stone, one of the most important stones in the monument, positioned at the geometric heart of the structure, does not match any quarry in Wales. Its mineral signature is completely unique among all the Stonehenge materials. When the AI compared its elemental fingerprint against every known sandstone formation in Britain, it found exactly one match. The Orcadian Basin in northeastern Scotland, 600 miles from Stonehenge, 600 miles across some of the most unforgiving terrain in Europe. In late 2024, a team led by Anthony Clark at Curtin University confirmed the finding using high-precision mass spectrometry. They analyzed tiny mineral grains trapped inside altar stone fragments. Some dated between 1 and 2 billion years old, others around 450 million years. This specific mineral fingerprint exists in only one geological formation on Earth, Scotland's ancient Orcadian sandstone deposits. The match was unmistakable. Dr. Robert Ixer of University College London, one of Britain's foremost geological analysts of Stonehenge, called the results unprecedented. He went quiet for a long moment before saying what everyone in the room was already thinking. Moving a 6-ton block across the full length of Britain using Neolithic technology bordered on the impossible. Professor Chris Kirkland laid it out plainly. The builders almost certainly used marine transport, guiding massive stones along hundreds of kilometers of rugged coastline, using boats, tidal patterns, ocean currents, and navigation skills that nobody believed Neolithic people possessed. Open ocean navigation in vessels built from animal hides and timber, launching multi-ton cargo from rocky shores into unpredictable Atlantic swell, timing departures to tidal windows that lasted only a matter of hours, navigating around headlands where currents could crush a boat against cliff faces. One miscalculation and the stone along with the entire crew would disappear beneath the waves. And they did this not once but repeatedly across generations. Kirkland did not hesitate when a journalist asked how confident he was. Very, he said. The geological evidence leaves no other explanation. These were not scattered tribes fumbling through prehistory. This was a coordinated civilization with trade and supply networks spanning the entire British Isles. Bluestones chosen for their ringing properties, sarsens chosen for density and durability, Scottish sandstone chosen for reasons the data could not fully explain. Every component selected with surgical intention, every stone a working part in a larger machine. But nothing prepared the team for what the AI found when it turned to the astronomical data. Everyone knows Stonehenge tracks the solstices. Summer sunrise through the Heelstone, winter sunset framing the trilithons. Thousands gather every year to watch it happen. Researchers assumed that was the point. They were only seeing half the picture. When the AI cross-referenced every stone's position against reconstructed star maps from 5,000 years ago, it detected another alignment far more subtle than the solar events. One that researchers had missed entirely because they were not looking for it, Dr. Giulio Magli, an archaeoastronomer at the Politecnico di Milano who has spent decades mapping celestial alignments in ancient monuments across 3 continents, reviewed the AI's methodology line by line. When he finished, he sat back in his chair and did not speak for nearly a minute. Then he confirmed it. The celestial geometry pointed to something he had never encountered in 30 years of research. Stonehenge is aimed at a mathematically empty region of the night sky. The builders hauled stones 600 miles from Scotland. They selected rocks that ring like bells from Wales. They engineered acoustics that rewrite human psychology. They sustained centuries of labor spanning generations of people who lived and died without seeing the finished structure. And they pointed their creation at nothing, a patch of absolute darkness. No star exists there. No planet moves through it. No constellation forms within it. Every other major alignment at Stonehenge tracks something real: the summer solstice, the winter sunset, the extreme positions of the moon. This alignment points at emptiness. Professor Amanda Chadbourne, an archaeologist who has worked extensively with English heritage on Stonehenge research, noted that the intentionality of the monument's alignments has always been one of its most compelling features. The idea that one of those alignments targets empty space raises questions that current archaeological frameworks simply are not equipped to answer. The part that made Magli visibly uneasy was the probability calculation. The AI determined with extremely high confidence that the positioning was deliberate, not approximate, not accidental, precise and intentional. The builders aimed their machine at something specific in that darkness, something that was not there when the stones were raised, something that might not be there yet. What if Stonehenge is not aimed at the sky as it was, but as it will be? And that leads to the darkest question of all. If someone had the knowledge to build this, the astronomical sophistication to aim it at a future event, and the organizational power to sustain the project across centuries, who exactly were they? Because the answer erases everything we thought we knew about Neolithic Britain. For generations, we told ourselves a comforting story: separate tribes coming together to build a shared monument. Cooperation, community, peace. The AI demolished that narrative entirely. A structure requiring this level of precision, this volume of labor, and this length of sustained construction cannot emerge from tribes working cooperatively. The mathematics simply do not allow it. Building Stonehenge required centralized authority, someone capable of commanding massive labor forces across multiple generations. Someone who understood astronomy, geology, acoustics, and human psychology at a level we are only now beginning to appreciate. The stones from Wales, Marlborough, and Scotland were not gifts exchanged between allies. They were tribute extracted from subordinate groups, resources demanded by force or maintained through fear. The AI estimated thousands of laborers across several generations, people born into the project, people who spent their entire lives hauling and shaping stone for a purpose only the ruling class fully understood. That is not cooperation, that is compulsion, and here is the most chilling detail of all. There are no signs of large-scale warfare from this period, no battlefields, no fortresses, no mass graves, just perfect silent organization spanning centuries. The kind of control that does not need armies because it has something more powerful. A machine that manufactures belief and terror on demand. Who would dare rebel against rulers who could summon the voice of the gods themselves? The elite did not threaten violence. They simply brought people into the circle, let the stones do their work, and spoke on behalf of the divine. The machine made resistance impossible, and that machine is still running. In 2024, something happened that researchers have been waiting nearly 2 decades to witness: a major lunar standstill. An astronomical event occurring roughly every 18.6 years when the moon reaches its most extreme positions on the horizon. The last one had occurred before most of the current research team began their careers. English Heritage organized an observation team at Stonehenge for the event. Archaeoastronomers set up instruments between the ancient stones as dusk settled over Salisbury Plain. The air was cold. The grass was wet. The moon crept toward its maximum declination, the farthest point north it would reach for another 18 years. Professor Clive Ruggles of the University of Leicester, one of Britain's leading authorities on ancient astronomy, stood inside the circle as the moonlight shifted across the stones. He had spent years theorizing about this moment. Now he was watching it happen, and the stones responded. Not metaphorically, not loosely. The lunar light tracked through gaps and alignments in the monument, exactly as the ancient builders had calculated it would. Shadows fell where they were supposed to fall. Light entered where it was supposed to enter. The geometry locked into place like a key turning in a lock that had not been opened in 1806 years. 5,000 years of rain, wind, frost, and human destruction. And the machine still performed its function with breathtaking precision. Ruggles later told colleagues it was one of the most extraordinary moments of his career. Standing inside a 5,000-year-old instrument and watching it execute its design in real time left him, in his own words, struggling to find adequate language. The machine still works. After 50 centuries, it is still tracking, still measuring, still counting down towards something that builders considered important enough to dedicate their entire civilization to marking. Stonehenge is not a relic, it is not a ruin, it is an active device. Its acoustics rewrite human emotion. Its stones were selected from across an entire nation for properties we are only now learning to measure. Its geometry locks onto celestial events with accuracy rivaling modern observatories. And one of its alignments points at empty sky, a region of perfect darkness where nothing exists. Yet, if this structure functions as some kind of cosmic instrument tracking events we are only beginning to recognize, one question becomes unavoidable. What moment was so critical that ancient people spent centuries building a machine to mark it? What alignment justified hauling stones from the far edges of Britain, engineering acoustic terror, and maintaining generational control over an entire civilization? What happens when that empty patch of sky is no longer empty? That is the question I want you to answer in the comments. What do you think Stonehenge is really counting toward? A celestial event? Something we have not discovered yet? Drop your theory below, I read every single one. 5,000 years ago, a civilization far more advanced than anyone imagined built a machine from carefully selected stone, precisely engineered sound, and starlight. They aimed it at an empty patch of sky, and they waited. The machine is still running. If this changed the way you think about Stonehenge, smash that like button. It helps more people find this. Hit subscribe and tap the notification bell so you do not miss what comes next. Because we are pulling the thread on ancient sites all over the world, and what we are finding is going to change everything. We are just getting started.